You are listening to the Vet Podcast, presented by veterinarian Dr. Brian Greger from New Zealand. Join us as we discuss pet health issues from around the world.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Vet Podcast. It's been a fairly monumental week for me this week. After 36 years of being a veterinarian, I'm stepping back from my practice and now I'm unemployed. So I've got plenty of time for doing the things that I enjoy doing. We've got a relatively large property with a lot of garden. I have got a lot of fishing to do. I am making cheese now, of all obscure things, and touch wood, there will be a lot more time for making podcasts. So I'm going to have a slight change in the way that I'm doing these podcasts, I think. In the past, they have been a little bit technical. I've been trying to coordinate the podcasts with interviews with people from around the world. What with the time differences and everybody's got busy lives, it did become quite difficult to get everybody at the same place at the same time. So I think what I'm going to do now is get a little bit more James Herriot-y. Before I crank into what I was going to talk about this time, it's funny how you can go along doing things that you think are a little bit different, only to find that there is somebody next door doing the same thing. Now, it just happens that in Timaru, the town that I was practicing in, it's a relatively small service town. There are 3 small animal practices in it. I had heard rumours that there was one of the vets from one of the other practices had been doing something similar. But I noticed that Alex Avery, who is a veterinarian at one of the other practices, liked the Vet Podcast a while ago. So I thought, I'll chase that up and just see what's going on there. Now, Alex is doing a very similar thing to me. He's running a Facebook page called Our Pet's Health, and he's also got a podcast called Call the Vet. Now, I've had a listen to a few of them, and they're actually really good and really interesting. So if you do want to broaden your horizons, perhaps have a listen. Just search for Our Pet's Health and Call the Vet, and have a listen to some of the things that Alex has to say. So what I'm going to talk about this time is, it's just one of these weird things that happened to me quite a few years ago now. Our job is fairly unique. We spend our days doing things to animals which really they aren't too keen to have done to them, and their natural reaction is to inflict pain to those around. Needless to say, as veterinarians and as animal health professionals, we do get a few minor work-related injuries. The arsenal that animals have is quite varied and quite large. Cows have their feet for kicking, their heads for charging. Horses have their feet for kicking and they bite. Birds peck. Larger birds can do considerable damage with their claws or talons. Cats scratch and bite. Dogs just bite. Get the picture? Now, often owners are quite taken aback when they are told that their animal has tried to mutilate us. He has never done that before is a fairly common answer. When I'm working with animals in the consult room, there's a couple of ways we go about it. I know, or I don't know, I understand that in particularly places like the States, it is the done thing to have the animal techs or the RNs or whatever name you're giving to them actually hold the animals so that if the owner does get bitten, there is no comeback on the practice. A little bit different here. I would prefer that we have one of our nurses holding the animal if the animal is getting a little bit angsty. They are very, very good handlers. With the minimum of stress they can hold the animal. I do get a little bit stressed sometimes when we get the "please don't hold him too tight" comment from the owner, when the nurse is trying to hold the animal and the only thing which is keeping my hand attached to the rest of my body is the firm grip of the nurse around the neck. Some clients feel that they control their dog by reasoning with them. Without holding their animal on the consult table, they will ask them to stand still for the vet. When the dog does turn around to try and bite us, which they will invariably do, often they'll get told off in a reasoned voice, of course. I've even had the "you won't get a treat when you get home" comment made. Now, I had this scenario taken to the extreme a while ago. It was a small little lap dog, and it had, a single child psychological makeup, and it was sitting on my table. I was examining around the back end when it curled its lip and gave out a low growl, which is one of the real big red lights from these wee animals. He got the "Jack, please stop that" talk from the owner, but there was no real effort to hold him. I asked the owner if she could perhaps hold the head still for me. I was told that this was how he talked to people and he had never bitten anyone. I was about to call one of the nurses in to hold him when he swung around and latched onto my hand. There was a shriek from the owner and she gathered up the dog. I was left with blood dripping from the back of my hand. The owner was not the repentant person that I thought she would be. In fact, not once was I asked if I was all right. The dog was hugged and there was a lot of there, that's all right. But the next question is one that I will never forget, and it absolutely floored me. Will you give him a shot so he doesn't catch anything from your nasty blood? Am I that infectious? I would be really interested to know what you make of this new format. Why don't you just flick me an email at vetpodcast@gmail.com and let me know. Alternatively, you can still find us on Facebook, just search for Vet Podcast. We also have an Instagram and a Twitter account, again, Vet Podcast. You can listen to us on Stitcher. We're now on Spotify and iTunes, or any other podcast player that you are using. And don't forget to just track down Alex's work too on Our Pet's Health and Call the Vet Podcast.